Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. My name is Mark Pendlebury from Whiskey Brother, and this is another episode of WB Live. There's always this fear, the sinking feeling in my chest when we start the live stream and the platform reflects like 0 eyeballs, and you just think, oh no, are we going to embarrass ourselves with our international guests? And then thankfully, some people tune in. So thank you very much for joining in. It's good to kind of have a digital dram and kind of share some whiskey under the current circumstances. Wherever you're watching from, I hope you're well and safe and healthy. And again, thanks for watching. We're not going to waste any time with this. We're here for one reason and one reason only, and that is Ardnamurchan, our 2 fine gentlemen from the distillery. Maybe a little bit of Adelphi, because there is a connection, and then drinking some really interesting and new whiskies and good whiskies at that as well. I haven't tried all of these yet, so I very much look forward to sharing them with you. Alex did ask us, or he asked me to just kind of share that he recommends we pour the whiskies early, so I haven't done that. I'm going to do that now quickly. If you don't have the whiskies, it's absolutely fine. South Africa was very fortunate enough to get allocation of these packs. They did go all around the world. There's obviously a limited number. So yeah, we do have them still available on Whiskey Brother. There's about another 20, 25 or so. So if you don't have one, you can definitely get one. And then you can come back and watch this afterwards and then drink it kind of retroactively. And if you don't have the whiskies, it doesn't matter. You're still going to learn a lot. You're still going to hear about new distillery, new releases, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of 2 kind of industry folk. So I'm going to pour my whiskies. While I pour my whiskies, we're going to show you a short Ardnamurchan video, and then we'll bring Connal and Alex up, our special guests for this evening. I'll do a short intro once they join me on screen, actually, and maybe even ask them to introduce themselves. So stand by for a very glossy and well presented Ardnamurchan video. Hello. Alex, welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be there.
How are you both doing tonight?
Yeah. We're still in various stages of lockdown here in Scotland, which keep on changing. So we never quite know what we're meant to do and what we can do. But we're okay. So thank you.
You can.
Yeah, well, we know that feeling locally as well. Where are you both dialing in from? Just so that we have a sense of where you are.
Well, I'm up the top, so I'm in the Highlands of Scotland in a wee town just outside Inverness called Nairn.
And I'm a bit more central. We have a house just on the farm where we grow the barley for the distillery and do all the bottling for Adelphi and Ardnamurchan, which is in Fife. So that's about 20 minutes north of Edinburgh.
All right, so brilliant. So I think for the sake of all our viewers, and we actually have a nice healthy amount, I expect there's lots of whiskey in glasses at the ready. But if you could please, I think it'd be useful to have a brief introduction to the 2 of you and what you do, because I've seen a lot of Ardnamurchan and Adelphi paraphernalia, and even in that video, you both make an appearance. So it feels like the two of you do a bit of everything.
Actually, I didn't make an appearance in that video. I wasn't invited.
Oh, sorry, Connal asked me not to mention that. My apologies.
No, I've probably been in far too many, so that's why. So yeah, I'm Alex Bruce, as it hopefully says on the screen. I've been with Adelphi since 2004, which is when it changed ownership. And back then there were just two of us. We've kind of grown the business. The single malt category's taken off, and we've grown with it. So there's now 30 of us, or just over actually now. Plus, of course, we've got the distillery. So yeah, I've been around, kicking around, drinking whiskies for about 16 years with Adelphi, and enjoying every minute.
Great.
If you weren't enjoying every minute, I'd be worried.
Yeah, I'm Connal, and I'm the sales director for Adelphi and Ardnamurchan, and I've been with the team now just coming on 2.5 years now. Would you believe that, Alex? You probably can. I used to have hair when I joined, but obviously it's like that's me being harsh. It's a dream job. I love every minute of it, and it is a varied role. You're quite right, Mark, and that's one thing that certainly struck me when the role became available. So both Alex, myself, and the team do a bit of everything, and that's very much the way we like to keep it. So anything from label design, cask selection, everything from a Adelphi point of view, going after casks, nosing all the casks for the most recent Ardnamurchan, which we did last week. It's all over the shop, but it keeps us ticking over. Every day is a new day, and there's always something else to do. So it's no complaints my end.
Brilliant. So I think if you wouldn't mind, I'd be quite curious to for the sake of our audience and just to kind of almost segregate Adelphi versus Ardnamurchan. We're happy to talk about both. That's not the reason for the segregation, but I'm curious just to kind of understand the relationship between the two. We're fortunate enough that at the moment in South Africa, we are getting an allocation of Adelphis. We've been very fortunate enough to get an allocation of Ardnamurchan. So is it kind of, when we speak about those two brands from a front-facing perspective, is it all the same team? Is it all happen out of the same kind of locations? Yeah,
so I think probably best I give you a very, very brief history, and that kind of explains how the two companies work. So Adelphi, the name Adelphi Distillery, which is the company, the group name, if you like, came from a distillery that once existed in Glasgow in the 1800s. And the great-grandson of the guy who owned that resurrected the name. So the distillery is long gone, but he resurrected the name in 1992 as an independent bottler of Scotch whisky. So he came in quite early days with the likes of Signatory. There were people like Gordon MacPhail, Hayden Heads already there. But Jamie Walker, that was his name. That his real thing was just selecting whiskies that he really enjoyed himself. So finding a single cask that he could get stuck into and enjoy. And when he found one, he would bottle it and then sell it to a very small number of customers who enjoyed the same. So that's kind of what I inherited in 2004. Our stock in 2004, when I joined to run the company, we had 3 casks and about 200 bottles. That was it for the whole world. And we just built up from there. So the concept of Adelphi as an independent bottler has never changed. We still just select on taste. The age of the whiskey, the distillery name, whatever, is less important to us. It's all about taste and wanting to enjoy, wanting to have that second dram or a second glass, whatever. That's the ethos behind it. So we are very selective. We reject around 40 casks before we find one, give or take on average, for Adelphi. But it's a really interesting method, if you like, as an independent. So yeah, we did very well. We got a lot of demand for Adelphi's going through the 2000s, and we got to the stage when we realized that method was kind of flatlining in terms of supply. Everyone wanted single malt, and it was getting harder and harder to find mature stock. So we took the decision then to take control of our future quantity as well as quality. And the only way we could see we could do that was to build our own distillery again. And that is when the idea of Ardnamurchan started in about 2007, 2008. Two of our main shareholders have land in this very, very remote westerly part of the Highlands. And so it made sense to build a distillery there. It is single track road for an hour. It is just about as remote as you can get in Scotland. But because of that, and we can talk about this as we go through, because of that, we are able to use local resources. So raw materials coming from forestry, coming from water, all these kind of things. So it's a very exciting kind of evolution in terms of eco distilleries. So we finally got planning permission and then started constructing in 2013. And the first spirit ran from the stills at the end of July 2014. And the first cask was filled on the 1st of August 2014. So we are now 6 and a bit years ahead. We have something like 10,500 casks in those warehouses that you can see. And what we are tasting tonight is our first ever release, along with some of the other stock that is maturing there. So that all took place in September this year. And it will just get bigger and bigger, hopefully, from now on.
Right. Do you? I mean, it's I think an incredible thing that you've been part of. I mean, but I would also imagine it's just been kind of nonstop. You know, almost like a roller coaster. Once it got going, it just kind of not grew out of control, but just kept going and gaining momentum. Have you had a moment to kind of sit back and appreciate the fact that you have something out, you've got whiskey, like now making its way across the world? Has that kind of dawned on you yet?
Connal?
Oh, look, I just look back on stories that I've spoken to Alex about, and it wasn't that long ago that he'd be bottling Adelphi on his kitchen table, and his 3 young daughters would have been helping at that stage, getting them out to market. That is literally what Adelphi was started as, and to consider now we're a team of 30, probably just over 30 now, which again is completely tiny in the grand scheme of things. The journey's been quite incredible, and it's just been, and to be part of it for the last couple of years has been honestly an honor, to be honest. And I'm just looking forward to being able to get a bit of whiskey out to market where people can enjoy, open, and hopefully enjoy, and I have a bit of volume for a change, because as you know, things with Adelphi, it seems to be very limited, as you can imagine, and single cask whiskey is a difficult game. We love it. That's what we've been doing for the last 27, 28 years. So having our own distillery and our own liquid now that is come of age is just so exciting for us. It really is.
How as an independent bottler, I guess first, how does, and I may be an obvious question, and I think that's partly the intention, but how does building your own distillery help with the independent bottling side of things? Because you can't just release cask after cask of Ardnamurchan under the Adelphi label. So there's obviously a strategy there. I'd love to know what that looks like behind the scenes.
Yeah, so, and I think this is partly answering your first question, which I didn't answer properly in hindsight, is how the brands work together.
Right.
There is definitely a symbiotic relationship, but they are also very separate in terms of how we, not how we market them, but how we look at them, I suppose, how we put them together. Adelphi, we are relying on other people to produce good whiskey, and then for us to come along and select it when it's mature. Ardnamurchan, it's all down to us. We have no excuses, nowhere to hide. And actually, even though we share distribution for both brands in just about every country that we deal with around the world, that may change in the future. It may be that some of our traditional Adelphi ones, from way back in early 2000s, aren't big enough for where we want Ardnamurchan to be. I hope that we can all grow together, because we've built up such great friendships over the years. But the other point of difference, and this has only happened because we've actually seen it, so to speak, is been around how we put how we look at the two whiskies. So if you take an average Adelphi, we have a mature cask of whiskey, we sample it, and if we like it, we bottle it. Simple as that. We don't change it in any way. But for Ardnamurchan, we have, for the first batch, as an example, 53 casks in there altogether. And Connal and I spent 2 weeks locked in the warehouses back in July when we were allowed to move for the first time after the original lockdown. And we went round for the first time tasting and nosing and tasting as many casks as we could in the first warehouse, the one at the bottom. And then we took samples. We retired to where we were working from on the peninsula and spent 3 or 4 days putting together 3 different variants of those casks that we had sampled. The one we thought that would work the best in terms of how we would normally look at an Adelphi was the one where we selected each cask on its own merit. So every single sample we rated, and all the top scores went into this vatting, and that was one of the options. But in fact, that was the least favorite of the 3 options that we put together, because all those casks were so advanced, if you like, so extrovert, that they kind of ended up fighting together. They didn't vat well. Yeah. So we ended up with a much more simple structure, which is exactly the same as the production schedule that we put in place back in 2014. So the same ratio of peated, unpeated, and bourbon sherry casks. So yeah, it's a learning curve. It's still a learning curve for us, but we're having a great time doing it.
Brilliant. So you mentioned then the fact that the distillery produces both peated and unpeated whiskey. The peated being, I believe, it's more of a kind of medium to high peat at about 30 to 35 parts per million. What is the kind of distillation approach there? Is it because a lot of distilleries will have a peating season where they only produce peat, and then for the rest of the year it's unpeated. How is it done at Ardnamurchan?
Yeah, so that's normally, that's a very traditional way of doing it, where you would normally peat or malt your barley, whether you peat it or not. You would normally malt your barley in the colder months, because obviously once germination starts on your malting floor, if you're using a floor, you don't want it to accelerate too quickly, because it forms like a grass, like a mat, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want it to sprout too quickly. So in the cooler months, you can keep the temperature of the floor down. You can keep on top of it if you like. But in modern malting, so we basically, although we grow most of our own barley down here in Fife, we give that barley to a maltster to malt for us. So in modern conditions, they don't need to worry about seasonality at all. But basically, we are looking for 50%, so 6 months of the year on unpeated and 6 months on peated. And we might do that on a quarterly basis. It just depends on logistics with the maltster, really.
Okay, and then I feel like we're naturally just headed towards the first sample in the kit, and the first sample in the kit being the first batch. I'm referring to this as the inaugural release because it really is your first ever release. But here there's a combination of both peated and unpeated spirit, that has been vatted together. So. For future releases, is this very much kind of, at least for the foreseeable future, the profile of the distillery that you're looking for, or will we start seeing kind of peated and unpeated releases as opposed to a combination of both?
I think we initially, when we locked ourselves in the warehouse for that 2 weeks, we definitely tried to achieve or go after what we could call a house style, a core style, which I think we're really happy with. Alex, are we happy with it? We're happy with it, and it works out perfectly because it is our annual production in a bottle. Really, it's, as you said, it's 50% peated, 50% unpeated malt. It's about a makeup of 65% bourbon casks, 35% ex-sherry casks, both PX and Oloroso. That's the sort of style we're wanting, that coastal, saline, maritime, dare I say it, style of whiskey, with that beautiful citrus, oyster shell-esque, beachy, coastally whiskey, which hopefully we've achieved in this whiskey. There will be other releases coming your way. We're going to try a sneak peek at one of them, dram number 2, actually. And yeah, we'll play about with it. We'll do some fully peated whiskey. We might do some fully unpeated style expressions, but they will be limited batches at this moment in time.
Right. So I think what's very commendable, and as a whiskey enthusiast and a whiskey lover first and foremost, I think what you've done is I want to say quite unusual, because you're also the distillery has matured in such a time where there are many other new distilleries in Scotland as well, and some of those inaugural releases are not price friendly at all. They're seen as kind of maybe more collectible, not really so much for drinking, but more for just displaying and maybe investing in even. This inaugural release is very well priced. There's kind of almost a global selling price to some degree, and it's a large batch. It's not a single cask. Then only the lucky few get a bottle. So, I mean, was that ever a point of discussion, or was it always to try and have more available and be more accessible to the average whiskey drinker?
So, we can go right back to the beginning of the design stage of the distillery. We originally planned to build a 100,000 litre capacity distillery, which we felt was more than adequate in those days. But before we even finished it, so within the space of that year that we were building, it was moved to a 400,000 litre, or potentially even more. We could if we did every day of the week. And the reason being was that we wanted this to be a proper single malt brand going forward, not just a kind of collectible, as you mentioned. And there is that kind of no man's land between about 100,000 litres capacity and 400,000 litres. You're in a kind of no man's land where you're producing quite a lot, but maybe not quite enough to make to generate enough cash to then put behind the brand to then accelerate the brand further. So you need to be of a level where you really can get behind that brand once you're happy with the quality and all the rest of it. You've mentioned quite a few times already tonight the word inaugural, and we have on purpose not put inaugural anywhere. We haven't put first on the carton for the whiskey or anything like that. We've simply put a date stamp of when we released it, and that is our only recognition, if you like, that the fact that this is in batches. We want this to be as consistent as possible as a core range, as Connal mentioned, and we will simply let you know when we bottled it, and that's it. So there's no song and dance, there's no kind of hysterics around this being the first one.
Right. Okay. So I my bad. I'm sorry. Mentioning the I word.
You're certainly not the only one.
Yeah, I'd imagine not. So okay. Well, then speaking of the first batch, I don't know what this inaugural nonsense is, but speaking of the first batch, shall we give it a go? It is part of the tasting set.
Yeah, that's just the order of the drams. If you're tasting along tonight, if not, no worries. I know there's people on the beers already. Oh, I'm saying already. It's your guys. You're definitely beer o'clock just now. Yeah, no, it's taste along. If you haven't got a pack already, you can always watch this back, or I believe they're still available from Whiskey Brothers. So, yeah, so this is our first release, and it's AD September 21. So batch release, if you like. That's literally it. We bottled it on the 9th of September. In September this year, and it's batch 1. We will batch every release for the year. So, for example, we're working on the next one now, and that's looking like it's going to read 012101 again, because we reset every year. It's just to keep on top of things. It's not just going to go 2 and then on and on and on and on. So, we bottled it at 46.8% alcohol for the only reason of flavor, to be honest. We felt it needed a little nudge north of 46%, and that's just what we did. There was no other real reason or exciting reason I can give you apart from flavor driven, which is pretty much what we try and do at all times. And yeah, the tasting notes, which I still remember to this day, basically not even writing them down. There was myself, Alex, our new colleague, Graham Mackay, and Mr. Dave Broom made a little appearance up at the distillery. He was doing a wee tour and he's also for his new book, and he joined us and helped us sort of just walk through some tasting notes, and that they've appeared as our sort of official ones. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. I assume you've already tried this, Mark.
I have indeed, yeah. I couldn't wait. Literally, as soon as it was delivered to the store, opened up the case, opened up the bottle, and we all gave it a go. And it went online pretty much the same day, and it's been very well received. If you are in South Africa and watching this, I hope primarily you are. Yeah, these sold out yesterday or the day before, so they lasted a few weeks. We're very thankful that we were able to get into the country, and we got it at a very kind of a nice time, because if you're online on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, etc., I'm seeing different people in different parts of the world getting their bottles now. So it feels like often, sadly, in South Africa, sometimes it can take a year to get the release to actually filter down into the country. So it was really nice to kind of get it in a timely fashion. So thank you to both of you for caring about us and for getting us some of this the first batch.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure's ours. I mean, it's been fantastic in getting our whiskey over to yourself, and we've been very well received. I've had lots of lovely messages from social media platforms from people in South Africa just saying that they're enjoying their drams, and it's just great. It really is. And in fact, that's one of them right there. And I don't know, is it Sagan or Sagan? I can't remember. I don't know how to pronounce it. But
yeah, Sagan.
Yeah. So a lovely message from him a couple of weeks ago, and that he got his bottles. So yeah, no, it's great. I will just tell you very quickly on this. So we decided to go with a carton. We're very, very thoughtful on the environment, but we felt that if we were going to do packaging of any description, that we would try and make it as sustainable and eco-friendly as possible. So we've had a few comments of people saying that they've got a slight smell off our cardboard, but it's just to let you know that it is 100% recycled waste paper. And we're the first, I believe, whiskey company in the industry to release 100% recycled waste paper cartons. So
brilliant.
Just all I would say to that, just imagine, it's all very well having one bottle or maybe two in your house and smelling it. Just imagine our warehouse that had 16,500 of these in it.
Every tasting note for the foreseeable future on all the releases will be kind of a bit of cardboard on there. All right, so Aslan Javar, gentlemen, and everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to see kind of the interactions. If you have questions, please do ask. We'll share them with Connal and Alex. I see a few questions that I'm kind of keeping in my back pocket for a little bit later on. I don't want to go too deep down a rabbit hole just yet. Starting things off nice and easy with a non-cask strength, not an inaugural, but a first batch release. Slanjo.
Slanjo.
I think this is delicious. Of course, I suppose to some degree I'm going to be biased as well, and I'm definitely not going to be a bad host, but I sincerely love this whiskey. This bottle here is my second bottle. I find it genuinely, just really good drinking, honest whiskey with lovely flavor to it. So I guess congrats and kudos to both of you and the team at the distillery. I think you're off to a cracking start.
Oh, thank you. And I'm delighted that you mentioned the distillery as well, as in the people there, because it's all very well us coming on and chatting about it, and these are the guys who actually made the spirit that has matured so well, a really good local team, 100% local team now.
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah, like I said, it's wonderful to them, and please, extend our thanks and our gratitude to them. Because you are so remote. I mean, how many people actually work at the distillery, and how easy is it to kind of have, I guess, accommodation in that area? So I've been fortunate enough to visit the distillery, and it is as remote can be, and for Scotland that says a lot. So how big is the workforce, and where do they all kind of trek in from?
So originally when we started, and this is one of the things that it's quite often nowadays someone will come up and say, "Oh, I want to build a distillery. Can you offer me advice?" And it's exactly what we said to Anthony and Kathy Wills at Kilherman all those years ago, and they were great. They opened their doors literally and told us what not to do or what to do as well. But But the one thing that we all forget about, and it's so important, especially when you're in a remote community like Ardnamurchan, is building that team. So we originally we brought in some expertise to train locals up. And without fail, everyone that we brought in only just survived one winter, and then they were off. But we now have the guy in charge, Gordon McKenzie, used to be the bus driver. So he used to drive the kids to school. And one day he saw this sign go up in a field that said, "Coming soon," with this kind of architect's drawing of a distillery. And he's now the production manager, So it's a dream. It really is an absolute dream. And we're building for the future as well. We're working with a local charity where we are basically selling them casks, a limited number of casks at cost price every year. They then allocate those to the kids who are growing up in that community in Ardnamurchan. And when the kid is old enough, when the child is old enough to drink, they get to sell the cask back to us if they want to. And any profit will then go towards their education, their university. And hopefully we can show them the distillery, how we work, and they can join the team in the medium to long term as well.
That is very cool. That is very cool. I look forward to seeing how that, I guess, happens over time. And I really do hope, and I guess from my side, for what it's worth, encourage you to share those stories, because there's so much I think like fake marketing, and you have a really good, genuine story. So that's wonderful. Sorry, Connal, you were going to say?
No, not at all. No, I was just adjusting the seat. But, I think it is good. And I think you're right. There is a lot of hyped marketing out there. We are trying to do our bit for the local community, and we do have a completely local team. And I think that is something to be very proud of. And, the distillery has been going for that 6.5 years. I think we did amazingly well to hold on without release. Okay, we released the spirit releases, but just holding on that little bit extra, hopefully, is going to stand us in good stead for a bright future. It gives us a lot more stock to play with. Obviously, 10,500 casks we've got sleeping in the warehouse, and it's funny because we're talking about building 2 extra warehouses, and you've got sort of the board meeting the other week, there's people saying, well, do we need another 2 warehouses? We've released our single malt. Surely our stock will be depleting. And, absolutely, you would think that. But, it's 53 casks we used for batch 1. And actually on that, it's all on the QR code on every bottle. So if you just scan it with a smartphone, you can track every single cask that went into this batch. So full transparency from that point of view. But yeah, 53 casks in one batch. We're doing 60, 70 casks a week. So we are going to need more warehouses. So it's been great. And yeah, it's just on to batch 2 now. We've selected those casks. They are going to come down to our warehouse in Fife so we can put together batch 2, hopefully with the team in the next 2 weeks or so. Funny story on that. We just found out that the ferry that we use to get to the distillery, so the John who drives our big truck to pick up the casks, he can no longer get the ferry to the distillery because it's on maintenance, which means he has to go via the Isle of Mull. So basically toot his horn past Tobermory. A completely backwards way of going, but it's the only way he can pick up the casks.
That's crazy. I guess this is a small downside of being so remote. All right, it is difficult to get to on a good day.
On a good day, it's a nightmare to get to. But listen, we like having the place to ourselves and just doing our thing quietly out in the Wild West, if you like.
Yeah. We've got a question from Quad Pipe, which is Morris, and he's saying, so Mark, are you getting any more stock of batch 1? I'm gonna, so I can answer that, and that's unfortunately not. There was a limited allocation. That's all gone. Connal, is there any batch 1 anywhere? It's all allocated and gone. Is that correct?
It's all gone out. It's all pretty much gone out the door.
Yeah.
I believe there might be a couple of bottles left on Paul Ulrich, which is our Swiss importer. But yeah, I mean, Switzerland to South Africa is a bit of a jump.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go into whiskey base, you'll be able to find the retailers that are selling it. And I'm not going to mention the other way of buying it because Jack.
So please don't. Yeah. So batch 1 is gone. You mentioned come January you're planning on batch 2. Do you have an idea of how many batches you will release next year, or is it just going to be on kind of maybe more demand driven?
I don't think it's going to be demand driven. There'll be some sort of structure to it, but we actually talked about this yesterday, Alex. It'll be just a case of just as much as the team can deal with, really. I mean, we'll just keep going. I mean, it's
I mean, every sort of release, if you like, it's a step forward for us in terms of being able to afford to do improvements, efficiencies, and things like that. So we have just literally this last couple of weeks, we've installed a vatting tank in the warehouse down here. So batch 1 was put together almost manually by blending lots of tanks together. We now have an 18,000 litre tank, so we can increase the batch size later next year if we want to. We can get up to 25,000 bottles in one. And if you look at it as a kind of curve, I mean, from a labour point of view, we could probably do at least 1 per quarter. Certainly 1 per quarter is about right at the moment, 1 release. But then, of course, we'll be looking at doing America as well, different one. We'll be doing the limited batches and so on. And we'll just build on these both in quantity and in number of batches, if you like, as we go forward. But no, I mean, we certainly hope to get at least 3 or 4 out the door next year.
Okay. So, and then just before we move on to dram number 2, we've got a question here. Is it Stingray? What is the goal for the core range? I mean, I guess, just based on what you said, the core range is at least for this foreseeable future an ever-changing outturn of batches that are attempting to kind of recreate this, not attempting, but will seek to recreate this distillery profile that you created in the first batch. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, we were in where we were last night. We were in Stockholm last night in Sweden, and I had a question, a similar question, which was, are you going to start releasing age statements? So actually saying, right, this is an 8, this is a 10, and so on. The answer is very simple. No, we're not. We are bottling based on the quality of the whiskey. We are not trying to fit into an age compartment. It's a very old-fashioned way of doing things, in my opinion, or in our opinion. So what we will be doing is when we, we're constantly checking these casks, how they're maturing. When we think there's a big enough difference between the original core style, the one we're working with at the moment, and a new core style, and it may be next year, it may be 2 years' time, we'll then introduce another core range, and it will be whatever age it is. But this is certainly got the distillery DNA in it, and all it will do is develop over time, and we'll release as it gets older.
I look forward to drinking all of those. Shall we move on to number 2?
Yeah,
maybe if either of you want to talk us through what we're about to sip on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. But just one more point on the Ardnamurchan single malt is that if you really are that wrapped up in age, that's fine. You can actually, as I said, just scan your bottle, full transparency of exactly how old the casks are and to what casks are in it. The youngest whiskey in that is 5 years old, so we could put a big 5 in the bottle if we wanted to.
Yeah, and I think it's worth. And again, it's I think it's good to predicate that by saying if you are caught up on the age thing, not to say that age isn't important, but it is one factor. But I think it was worth pointing out that there have been lots of new inaugural releases, so to speak, from not only Scottish distilleries but Irish distilleries and British distilleries globally, and most of those could not put a 5-year-old on it. I mean, you waited longer than you needed to, which is just job well done. Not trying to rush things, but I think it's worth pointing out, right? Because, and again, it's not a criticism to anyone. There's just different approaches. But if you look at Annandale or look at Glasgow Distillery or Lakes Distillery, they all released as soon as they could. Understandably, it's good for cash flow, it's good for the brand. Adelphi, I'd like to think, kind of maybe bought you guys an extra few years in terms of cash flow. But you've got something now that's minimum 5. I'd say most. If I would do the math, 6.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so fair comment, but I think if you want to find out, you can find that out just by scanning the bottle. So we've got it there for you, behind the label, if you like. So moving on to whiskey 2. So this is some of our oldest stock actually, and this is a sneak peek at a future release. I'm hoping to have this release possibly by April, May next year, and this is pretty much what you would call a finished whiskey. So it's a 2014 unpeated Ardnamurchan bourbon barrel, which has been transferred into a Paul Lanois, pretty much champagne cask. I can't really put it any other way. But there is no such thing really as a champagne cask, because it's a Chardonnay in essence, 100% Chardonnay, and it sat in there for about 11 months. Now the house that we get this very special champagne casks from is Paul Lanois, not very far. I'm not very familiar with Champagne or Reims. I've never been. Hint, hint, Alex. But listen, it's very close to Krug, and it's a family-owned run champagne house, and they produce 10 casks a year of champagne. Wow. And we have got through a friendship of Alex's, we have managed to secure these 10 casks to come to Ardnamurchan. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I first heard about these casks, I did roll my eyes and I wasn't exactly excited about it. But I must say, I have to eat my own words when things work. And this, for me, this has worked an absolute treat with our unpeated bourbon bottles. Alex, I'll let you say a bit more about the Paul Lanois.
Yeah, no, it really is a very, very niche, unique house. It's they have this incredible warehouse where they suspend these 10 casks on motorized wires, so they're constantly being turned very gently, so the Chardonnay remains on its lees, maximum contact of lees at all times. What they actually do, the way they sell these champagnes, is that they invite customers to come and buy the barrel to start with. So they get to decide the different toasting levels of every stave in this barrel. They can even decide on the oak. It could be French oak or American oak. They then end up with this beautifully hand-built bespoke cask or barrel or barrique, and it becomes part of the making of that champagne after the harvest, obviously. And when it's all finished, when it's gone through the whole process and come out in bottle, they get the whole outturn from that cask. And then they start again the following year. So that's how bespoke it is. It is a very, very special champagne house. I am yet to try the champagne. We have been dropping a few hints. And, but certainly the casks are doing a great job for us. And we get 10 every year, as Connal mentioned. But not only that, when we start emptying them, so the first batch coming out next year, we'll then have those 10 refills to put back into the system as well. And we'll get quite a lot of life out of them, given the quality.
Is there any, I mean, so these are quite, I want to say fancy, but these are quite unique casks, and then clearly, in very low supply. And is there any concern from the start that it may not work with the spirit? Is it a bit of trial and error and wait and see, or do you have some kind of comfort based on the type of spirit you're producing that it will work with this sort of influence?
No, very, very good question. Look, we felt that with 10, it was an experiment worth doing. It wasn't like we were, going to shove a month's production in there. It was just basically a day's worth of production went in. But we also, one of the things that we have seen through the years, selecting casks for Adelphi, we're not great fans of wine finishes in general. We prefer a more traditional approach to maturation. If I was to put wine finishes on a scale in terms of the ones we absolutely don't like and the ones that we can sometimes like, if you like, the white wine ones tend to be okay. We've had some very good ones actually that we've seen, but really big tannic red wines, we just feel kill the whiskey completely or destroy that DNA. So we were very careful not to go too far with these. And of course, with 10 casks, it was an experiment worth doing.
Excellent. We've got a question from Emil saying, what does the CK in the ADCK mean?
CK? Oh, sorry, cask.
Okay.
Yeah, no, CK is a cask. So this is a single cask.
Okay, cask 364. Okay, got it. There we go, Emil. That's the answer to your question. I'm going to look at the slides here. Is this this is something about fancy champagne?
So that's their cellar. That's where they it looks like something out of a Ridley Scott film or Alien or something. But it's that's you can't see it in that photo, but they are actually rested on wires, and that's his that's his yearly output really, and we get those casks. Wow. And in regards, I think someone else has asked in the chat earlier on, but we haven't got to it yet. But other casks, we're filling ex-bourbon barrels and ex-sherry casks, both PX and Oloroso, and hogsheads and bats. But of course, we are looking at other things. We filled quarter casks, we've filled port pipes, and we're flirting now with what else we can look at doing. Different styles of sherry, maybe. We've got 2 rum casks as well, which are from ex Adelphi bottlings, which we've just sent up there. So we bottled a Hampton Adelphi, Hampton Estate, and a Monymusk Estate rum. So they've just been filled as well. So there's we're not against anything, but obviously we need to do a bit of experimentation as well. So it's all fun. That's a really fun part of it. Is watching.
They won't. It's quite important to say they won't be part of the core. It's highly unlikely they'll be part of the core single malt. They will be special editions.
Okay, brilliant. This is a good wrap up of number 2 from Nico Ben saying number 2 is an incredible dram. Well done. This experiment really worked. So congrats.
Thanks very much, Nico. I must admit, I was pretty nervous about it.
Alex, I feel like I need to apologize, and I don't know if it's just my screen, but when I put a comment up on the screen, it seems to kind of cover your bottom area a little bit. So no offense intended. I'm sorry.
It covers me as much as you like.
It's working.
I need more biscuits without anyone seeing.
It's working.
So, number 2. I mean, this is the first time I've tried it. I plan on spending some time with these, in the coming days as well. But this is really lovely, and I see the flavor similarity with the batch release, but it definitely has a different element to it based on those casks. There's more of it's like a floral subtlety to it as well. Really nice drinking and interestingly so.
Yeah, I'm really excited to release it. Actually, Jenny Carlson, our new marketing manager, is her favorite dram. She just can't get enough of it. So I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people, and it's just grown on me since we've started doing these packs. So dram 3, and I should have mentioned really that that dram there and the next 2 drams are all natural cask strength, so they're really high ABV. So that was 58.2. This is 59.2. So they will take a little bit of water if you've got a little bit of water for on the side there. So this cask is a bourbon barrel, first fill bourbon, 2015. So this is 5 years old, from cask number 371, and its peating level is 30 ppm.
This is really exciting for me, Mark, and I know for Connal and the rest of the team as well. When we were starting to look at the casks maturing in July, or starting to look properly, rather than just going in and randomly selecting 1 or 2, we were going in, row by row, just going right down the rows. The casks that really amazed us in terms of consistency and how they had matured recently, if you like, how they'd come on, were these 2015 peated bourbon barrels, and this is the main backbone of the single malt. It's got so much going on. It's got fruit, it's got salt, it's seaside and tropical fruit. It's a really interesting combination, and a lot of people have described it as and this is again one of my favorite distilleries, but a lot of people have described it as a kulila without the iodine.
Right.
So it's got that kind of farmy style as well.
Along with the fruit as well, though, because I think Kalila for me has that fruitiness, and this exhibits that as well.
Yeah, for me,
this is
grapefruit.
Yeah. So yeah, more of a citrus style, and I definitely get that grapefruit. I think what I wasn't, although it's cask strength, and you expect it to be quite intense because potentially because of the alcohol, it's just a lot more, I want to say robust. Where the previous two. And the vatting makes sense because it's multiple casks. You're looking to have a balance. The cask samples, the second one I find with the champagne cask is still has a subtlety to it because of I would assume because of that champagne cask. This is just kind of a little bit more punchy, but in a good way.
Yeah, if you like your whiskey, it's for you.
You can smell the texture.
That's really good. So I'm starting to, so for all of them, particularly, I think more highlighted maybe more number 1 and 3, and even looking at the, the official notes on these, there is a salinity to it. Maybe it's kind of a coastal sea air, without going too far down a rabbit hole, because I think that could probably be a long conversation. I'm curious as to where you think, or where you believe, or where you feel, or intentionally what you've done to impart a salinity, a saltiness, a brininess, whatever term you want to use.
I'm just going to stop you there because, if you want to go in for the next 3 hours talking about the T, I believe you're talking about the T word. Am I right?
Well, no, I mean, maybe that's your explanation for where it comes from.
Peter earlier on, I saw on the chat mentioned something about terroir.
Peter
and why we were so concerned with the field to bottle side of things. So all I will say, just to sum up on this one, is we wanted to have control of and make the best possible spirit we could. And then once having done that, let nature take over. And for nature to take over, you've got to allow the maturation to be as interactive with nature as possible. Now, we have decided we want this to be on the same site as the distillery. So, we are just about the most westerly, certainly in terms of a number of maturation warehouses on one site, we are just about the most westerly, apart from Islay, that you'll find in Scotland. And you're right on the sea. So you're getting this massive interaction with what's being driven across from America at great speed by gale force winds most of the time. And of course, we're using the same water that comes out of the peat bogs and the hill. We're using that to reduce from still strength down to filling strength every time we fill a cask. So that's being added in. That's a local natural resource, if you like. And it's all going just to provide that little bit of unique flavor, really. That's what we're trying to get, which is true to the area.
It's working well for you, and you gave me more than I expected you to. so thank you. I look forward to pursuing that discussion again sometime. It's one of those kind of controversial topics in the world of whiskey.
Absolutely.
This is spectacular, and I think for many people, let's say fans of Islay, this is very recognizable. It's still got its uniqueness to it, but that peat. The bourbon cask working, it's kind of tried and trusted, so to speak.
Yeah, I think I'm really happy with their tasting notes on this one because tonight I'm getting them all. I'm really getting that grapefruit. It's saline, it's mineralic. There's that honey, that beautiful sweetness, and there is that definite cheesy. It's not an off note, but that smoked cheese. It's definitely there. So yeah, I think it's doing its tasting notes proud tonight. And again, a little drop of water, it doesn't need much. I mean, it's for me, I could drink it neat, but I think a wee bit of water just opens it up beautifully.
And just from experience, having had a few of these tastings now, and what Mark very kindly said at the beginning about pouring them early and letting them breathe. This one in particular, I was, should we say, nursing it while watching a film the other night on telly. And by the end of the film, it was just the most amazing whiskey. It started off good, but it became even better as the evening went on. So they really need time to breathe and show themselves in their full way.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I recommend everyone who has these at home and that's watching along and tasting along I'm gonna maybe hope or assume that you're not going to finish the whole bottle tonight. And I recommend, and as I plan to do, over the next coming nights, pour one, and as you say, Alex, just kind of spend time with it because these are single casks, because they're cask strength. Time will just kind of take you on a journey, and kind of show you all facets of what's in the dram.
Fantastic.
Shall we move on to? All right. So there's an interlude here. Anything in particular to note?
I know. I just thought it was quite a nice photo.
Are those Peter's casks?
Well, Peter said he's got 4 casks, but he's actually got 3 because we keep using one of them for our tours. One of
Sorry, Peter.
One of his casks was just unbelievably good. So we just decided to. I hope you don't mind, Peter.
Moving along swiftly.
He just disappeared.
All right, so number 4, which I noticed, which is quite noticeably darker than the 3 preceding it. I'm going to immediately assume maybe some sherry influence. Oh, yeah. It's on the screen. I'd be correct.
Yeah, so this is, I remember finding this cask actually. This is Warehouse 1, upper level. So I remember finding it before. In fact, we met. We were there. You were there as well. The whiskey show in London a couple of years ago. Last year.
Yeah. It feels like a couple of years ago.
It does feel a long time ago. So I found this cask. I thought, right, we'll get a couple of 70s drawn out of here and taken down to the show, and it was just going, one of those under the table drams that you can share for the odd person. And once people caught wind that we were pouring a sherry cask Ardnamurchan, we were all of a sudden very, very busy. So I was going down a treat there, and I knew that I really wanted to share this cask. So we bit the bullet and bottled the rest of it into minis. As you can imagine, our operations team was delighted with that. But 3,500 packs went around the world for us to have the ability to do what we're doing right now. So first fill, Oloroso sherry. And this was just under 5 years old when we bottled it. So it's nearly 5, 59.5. So it's a big old dram. But for me, it's just got this lovely balance of sherry cask mature whiskey and that peat. We've been a bit adventurous with the tasting and nosing notes. Boat varnish. I haven't tried that in a while.
This came up last night in Sweden. The tasting note here, people, you could hear them shouting out, "Where did you get boat varnish and Tiger Balm from?" And Graham, who was on it with me and Jenny, I think I said for Tiger Balm, because it's this kind of really strong menthol. It's very kind of glacier mint. You get some almost nose cooling eucalyptus, basically. And for Tiger Balm, my recollection was of an athlete, as in putting it on to soothe the pain of muscles and all the rest of it. But Graham's recollection of Tiger Balm was a massage, potentially in Thailand. So he came across it from 2 very different places.
I don't think you need to further that story because he's probably wrong.
It's all relative, right, to our experiences.
Yeah, no, I mean it really is showing lovely tonight. Cloves, we've got cloves there, do we? But it's that combination of almost maybe even like a ham on a barbecue, It's got that kind of ham pierced with cloves on a barbecue, maybe with a bit of honey on it. It's got that sweetness.
It's almost a bit of a barbecue sweetness.
Yeah. It's a decent. I would say it's a decent whiskey to finish any tasting on. But But that's just there'll certainly be a peated sherry release in the near future, and there'll probably be an unpeated sherry release in the near future too. So
excellent. Yeah, and that leads on to Ricky's question here, which is, will these other whiskies, number 2, 3, and 4, become available? Connal, you mentioned hopefully number 2 with the champagne cask. You're planning on kind of a release.
Yeah, absolutely. So the champagne one, which I need to stop calling because I'm not really allowed to call it that, but I don't really know what else to call it at this stage. That will be, so we've got 10 casks that have been transferred. So we've used 1 for these tasting packs. So the other 9 will go together, and that will be released hopefully, let's just say April next year. Dram 3 and 4, these were just single casks that we tapped and put into miniature format for you to go around the world. But yes, we've got lots of other ones, thankfully, like this, so we can definitely do a limited run or release that are very similar to the styles that you've tasted tonight.
Excellent. I think from as a whiskey enthusiast, and then I've seen the popularity of the tasting set, but I would encourage you, and I would maybe ask. I mean, keep doing them. Once a year if you've got a different set available. Just to show people what you're doing in the warehouse, and for events like this, which I think are vital to helping the brand and to kind of introducing people to the whiskey. They're awesome, and they're not enough distilleries doing them, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was almost a spur of the moment decision because of lockdown. How are we going to launch a whiskey, a brand new distillery? How are we going to launch it globally? And we had this idea literally overnight. But you're right, it does have longevity. I think if you do it for the right reasons, rather than just yet another tasting, if you do it for the right reasons, it's a very good thing to have available. And we will need to put in a little bit more in terms of mechanical assistance at the warehouse, because these miniatures were hand bottled. And so 3,500, that's 14,500 miniatures they had to do.
That's impressive. Somebody must hate you out there, or several people.
They do.
On that, and I think the original plan is from my reading and kind of keeping tabs on the progress of the distillery was a launch in 2021, so launch only next year, and that seems to have been brought forward. And I mean, you brought it forward to I think in what any perspective is the worst year on record for 100 years. So I mean, were you just ahead of schedule? Were you just eager to get the whiskey out? Am I misinformed?
No. That was going back to the beginning. We thought 7 years, 6 to 7 years. So 2021 would be about right. In fact, there are some markets that will be getting these whiskies in just about 2021 by the time it gets there. Okay. So we're not far off the mark. Now, what you say about doing it at the worst possible time, in a funny kind of way, and I mean this with all the greatest respect to everyone that's had to sit and stare at the same four walls and not be allowed outside for months on end. But in a funny kind of way, we have much more of more access to a dedicated audience than we would do in normal times for a launch. So that direct to consumer, like we're doing tonight, we get to interact. We get to have, it's all very well going to a whiskey show in London, but you get to talk to so many people, and it's so noisy, and there's so many whiskies to try. You end up leaving not really remembering what you've had or who you spoke to. Something like this is so much better about getting the ethos, the philosophy, the taste out there, if you like.
However, I'm not, I was supposed to be over there with you this summer, in July, end of July, was it? We were supposed to be doing the Joburg and Cape Town, and absolutely devastated from a personal point of view, because I'm just desperate to get over and see you and see the country. But we'll make it happen. I can't wait to get out there, and I can't wait to get anywhere, to be honest, at this stage.
Well, now you don't make me feel this good after your first comment, but I appreciate where you're coming from.
No, I was desperate to do that show, and we were all ready to go for it. But it's just.
Yeah, so I mean, for individuals watching that aren't aware, I mean, the Whiskey Brother annual show, the only whiskey show, was obviously cancelled this year, but the intention was to have at least Connal over, if not one or two other members from Ardnamurchan and from Adelphi. I think we'll just defer that, so Connal, the invitation is there, and at least now when you do come, many people have drunk your whiskies, so you'll have an easier time maybe. But I mean, I look forward to. Personally, very excited about the distillery. I was fortunate enough to visit you guys last year, I think it was, we've seen the reception locally. The single malt is gone. The tasting packs, there was a dozen left, and I suspect after this they're going to disappear quite quickly. and even from the comments tonight, very well received. So, thank you, and very well done. I can't imagine it was an easy task.
It had its challenges.
It's been an amazing few months, Mark, and a few years, but just the icing on the cake in these last few months. And going back to a question I think you posed right at the beginning about what was our dream, being able to do this with our own whiskey, simple as that, having our whiskey out there and enjoying it with friends all over the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and thank you for sharing it with us. And I mean, it seems obvious because you've got whiskey and we want to drink it, but like it is, and I feel like I'm becoming a broken record, but whiskey is just it's about the community, it's about the people, and that's from all the way, that's across the board, from the people in Scotland who make it to the people who built the distillery, in years gone by, to the individuals such as yourself who are bringing to kind of the market now. So and then of course to everyone drinking with us on this live stream. So we can have our whiskey and we can drink it alone, but it's not nearly as good as sharing it with fellow kind of passionate whiskey enthusiasts. So thank you for choosing to share it with the South African audience, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. I say this often, but I could sit here and speak to you all night. I don't think you want to. I think we'd slowly lose the audience, but I do appreciate your time, and I know on behalf of everyone that's kind of tuned in, thank you for your time, and take a moment to appreciate what you've done, because I'm going to do that, and it's absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Cheers. Sans revoir.
Right, thank you. Great to see you.
Thanks, everyone. Mark, as always, a pleasure.
I feel bad. I just emptied my glass. All right. I'm gonna let you go. Connal, thank you very much. Alex, thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon, and we look forward to future releases of both Adelphi and Ardnamurchan. Maybe on the next Adelphi batch, we do this again. I think this was very well received, we don't. South Africa is a long way away from Scotland, so this is a nice way to get us a little bit closer. But thank you for your time, and keep well, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Mark.
You too. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.
Bye.
I'm not going to say much more. I feel like I've already said too much, but I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, for watching. Great to have some really good questions and to have an audience to share the whiskies with. I'm very impressed by these. I look forward to savoring them and kind of sipping on them over the next few nights. I hope you do too. There are still a few tasting packs available, or at least they were before the live stream. So if you want a second one, go ahead. Unfortunately, we are out of the batch 1 single malt, but as you heard from Connal and Alex, batch 2 will be bottled in January, and South Africa, I expect we will get an allocation. If it isn't batch 2, it will be shortly thereafter with batch 3. So thank you very much, everyone. Great to see so many familiar names, and kind of an opportunity to share some whiskies. So have a good night, keep well, and thank you. Cheers.